G'day Australia. Thought I'd just do a quick video on the new 2.4 litre Cannon XSR that I own to highlight some of the issues that other new 2.4 litre Cannon owners may potentially need to look out for, especially if your car sounds like the gears are grinding in it, or you notice a diesel stain on the driveway just in front of the passenger door area, or that kind of general area there. So my Cannon's shown at 2 weeks old and it's a bit over 1100 kilometres on it. When I drove it back from Sydney after the long weekend at Easter, I was greeted for a fairly strong burning smell when I jumped out of the vehicle. When I grabbed reverse to move the vehicle, it sounded like I was driving my manual car, and I just hadn't put my foot on the clutch and just dropped it in. The gear dropped in really hard when I put it in reverse on the Cannon. Had a quick poke around online that night, led me to a post from 15th of April by Jason down in Victoria. And he's posted that on Facebook on the GWM Cannon 2.4 litre Australian Owners group. So he's put his Cannon up on a hoist and discovered what appears to be leaking transmission fluid. Also appears he's got some issue with leaking around the fuel filter as well. So I jumped onto my car, check out the situation, and also discovered I appeared to have exact same issues as what Jason had posted in his video there. So the preliminary diagnosis reading from his comments online appears that the torque converter seal may be the source of the transmission leak, and the diesel leak may be coming from a faulty fuel sensor on the filter housing itself. Now I need to point out that GWM hasn't seen my Cannon yet. There's a reasonable wait time for me to even get an initial inspection done from the local dealer. So the exact fault on my GWM remains unconfirmed at this point. So if you're looking under my car, just be mindful that I own an XSR. So I have the steel bash plates, which I don't believe are found on the other models. Obviously don't get under your car or touch anything unless it's been off for several hours, otherwise you're going to burn yourself pretty badly. And obviously if you're in any doubt, just check out with your local mechanic or your GWM dealer rather than getting under there yourself. So it may be hard to see the transmission fluid leaking. It's a really lightweight fluid and it's clear, but obviously it'll be super oily. Mine was actually brown because it was burnt. I've actually wiped the base clean of the transmission, why it looks clean here. And then, it was basically, if you look across on one of the black cross member along the bottom there, it obviously becomes a bit more obvious there. So, if you look on the right of that cross member, you can see, it looks a bit dirty over there, it looks a bit fuzzy. Yet conversely, if you look over on the left, it looks very oily and shiny. And then you can also see some of that oil stain has then flowed onto the bash plate below it as well. So there's no doubt that that's been leaking quite badly out of there. So it's not great. There's a bonus round if you want to go and check out if there's any leaking around your diesel filter housing. The leaking may result in a stain on your driveway. It's roughly in line with your passenger side door handle, and it's probably about ½ a metre in. So if you've got a diesel stain there, that might be a problem. Mine's protected from the bash plate, so it may not be present again on your model when you're looking at it here. There does appear to be leaking diesel out of the base of it, and then onto the bash plate there, obviously, again. So again, that's a pretty cause for concern for me as well. Again, this is all unconfirmed at this stage. However, there does appear to be a few more posts, from new Cannon owners coming forward online, starting to describe very similar symptoms to some of these. If it does turn out that, this is an issue that's affecting multiple Cannon vehicles, it'll be really interesting to see how GWM responds, as this may be their first major test in the Australian market for something like this, in terms of whether they potentially go down the path of doing some kind of recall or, an inspection of all newly sold vehicles, whether they potentially, offer some type of, delay, deny, defense stance in the hope that, they can ride out any legal challenge or, potentially even a class action if that should eventuate at some point. For me personally, I suspect it'll be a long and drawn out process to get the proper resolution and get those items replaced on my car. Given my car is brand new, it's potentially undrivable at this point. It's only 2 weeks old. There's no immediate resolution in sight. So it's certainly about food for thought, for other people who are looking to buy the new Cannon 2.4 litre, whereby the question of whether you potentially afford weeks, maybe even months, without your car, if you depend on getting your family around with it, or you're a tradie and, it's your primary workhorse to do your business. Thankfully for me, these aren't problems that I need to look at, which is, I'm just lucky in that aspect. But I expect there's many people out there that, this would apply to, and they really need to consider and, weigh up those risks, before making any new car purchase. Anyway, if you have a hunch that there may be similar issues going on your vehicle, by way of stains on the driveway or something similar, with the grinding of the gears sound as well, just make sure you get that checked out ASAP by either your local mechanic or your authorised GWM service centre. Cheers.